Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite. Bora reciclar? Eu sou Adriano Assi da Revista Reciclagem. Essa é mais uma transmissão ao vivo da nossa Semana da Reciclagem Veicular. E nesta sexta-feira a gente está trazendo cases, né? A gente já falou sobre Espanha, a gente já falou sobre o caso do Detran, do Rio Grande do Sul. E agora a gente traz a Sandy Blalock, da ARA, Automotive Recycling Association, para contar para a gente como é a reciclagem de carros nos Estados Unidos. Antes de qualquer coisa, logicamente, eu quero agradecer a Cofarja, Eldan e Destra, Bonfilioli, Lorene, Loritex, Senebogen, Cianfer e Vortex por nos apoiarem nesse projeto. E vamos trazer aqui a nossa convidada. Sandy, what a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you on this wonderful week that you're having all about auto recycling. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been something around 15, 18 hours of live transmission since Monday that we were addressing the subject. We had auto manufacturers, we had engineers, we had people concerned about car safety and so on. So this last day, we were bringing cases. So we already had someone from Spain. We had just had someone from a south state of Brazil telling about their experience on car recycling. And it's such a huge pleasure to have you representing ARA, an association. And I was doing some math. ARA is older than the first car manufacturer in Brazil. The first car manufacturer in Brazil was established in 1955, and your association started in 1945, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, 1943 actually. So we have been around for 77 years representing the
77
professional
years.
auto recycling industry.
So 12 years before we had our first industry, you were already talking about car recycling. So I guess you have a huge knowledge that you can help us here to unlock the car recycling in Brazil. Let me give you some context on what's going on in Brazil. So we do have a fleet around 80 million cars. We have a population of 230, 240 million people living in Brazil. And there are literally millions of cars sitting on DMVs, sitting on actually left around in streets. And we need to establish a car recycling policy. Our government has been debating this for the last 20 years, but so far, nothing happened. So we're bringing some international experiences and some other experiences around the country so we can understand and how can we help our government and how we as recyclers can get into this and make things happen. So at first, sure, I would like you to introduce yourself, tell a bit about your story on the car recycling industry, and a little bit of ARA, sure. And if you want to start telling our story about how does car recycling in U.S. works, that's what we're here for. Thanks for being with us.
Well, just so you know, I am a former auto recycler. I managed our family business here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, for about 20 years. We sold the business in 2010, and I started my role as an advocate for the automotive recycling industry. And so it was important to me that I work with recyclers around the country and around the world, actually, to make sure that we could protect the integrity of our industry. Auto recycling is such a vibrant industry, and when it's done right, it's such a huge asset to our communities. As you are facing there in Brazil, you know what happens when you don't have a vibrant auto recycling process in place with policies that protect the integrity of the legitimate professional auto recycler. We have some of that in the United States, and we certainly, ARA would certainly love to work with Brazil and the recyclers there in Brazil to help establish some guidelines and policies to help protect. ARA, as we said, has been around representing the professional auto recyclers since 1943. We are celebrating our 77th year. We're very happy that we've been able to be around this long and protect the industry. It's changing. We know it's changing. It's changing more rapidly now than ever, but it doesn't negate all of the things that we have going on out there in the world, such as you might be facing there with large numbers of abandoned and inoperable vehicles that nobody knows what to do with. But there are procedures and policies in place here in the U.S. that we could certainly help with some of the guidelines to make that happen for you.
Great. While we are doing this live transmission, I'll be looking sideways. It is not on a lack of respect. I'm just checking our chats. We're live on Facebook and Instagram, and actually, Facebook and YouTube. So you people hearing us, leave our comments, send your questions. So let me do the first question. Let me start from the beginning. I mean, just like I mentioned, we have cars laying around. People just like got tired of it, or maybe the car they got it from their grandfather, and they one day somehow, some way, who knows when, fix it. So it's like a sentimental thing. So how does the recycling industry works, and when is decided that you must recycle a car? Is there like a annual inspection, or how does your government tells, well, this needs to go to recycling, or this needs to be dismantled, or somewhat?
Well, I can tell you in the United States, we are definitely a free market country. We believe that the owner of the vehicle makes that final decision. So there's not really a standard requirement in the U.S., but you do know in the United States we have 50 states, and our states actually play a huge role in what we call home rule. So for the most part, in most of the 50 states in the United States, the titled owner of the vehicle maintains the right to decide what happens to the vehicle. There's no age restrictions for roadworthy vehicles. There is, however, many states and municipalities that have emissions requirements for vehicles to be roadworthy, but they cannot force an owner to dispose of the vehicle, only require it to pass emissions to be a safe and legal operating vehicle on the roadways. Some jurisdictions can require owners to dispose of vehicles that they feel are nuisances, for example, such as abandoned or inoperable vehicles that just seem to pile up on people's properties. But it can only be declared a nuisance, and for that reason, and the laws or ordinances that allow the local government to take this action are basically there to protect the community as a whole. So not really any law saying that a vehicle has to be recycled like there are in many countries. We don't tax vehicles excessively like they do in some countries that really promote people to take those cars off the road and go buy new vehicles. So we really don't have that system here in the United States. And just as a matter of fact, the average vehicle on the road in the U.S. today is 11.9 years, and that's growing annually. And of course, vehicles last a lot longer than they used to, 25, 30 years ago, just because of the modern technology and the new information, the new way that the vehicles are built, all the onboard diagnostics, everything that allow vehicles to last longer. And the last fact that I saw about new vehicles on the road today, only about 5% of the vehicles on the road in the U.S., it's predicted that by the end of this year, that only 5% will be new vehicles.
Only 5%. Well, and 11 years for our industry is you have a very, very new fleet compared to what we have here in Brazil. Actually, you have trucks from the early 70s still working around, still doing their jobs around 70s and 80s. So that's pretty impressive. So, well, what parts are not suitable for recycling? Do you have legislation on that? And I understand you have like a pull apart yards that people will go and take parts of old vehicles to put on their own. So how does this work? I mean, how does is there any restrictions on certain kinds of parts that could be reused?
Well, let me tell you this, ARA strives to protect the rights of our members in the industry to have no restrictions on the resale of any automotive parts. The only part in the US that cannot be resold for reuse, it can be sold obviously for commodity purposes, are catalytic converters. That law got passed by our federal Environmental Protection Agency, and it was really a clean air issue just to protect our air, like a lot of countries are concerned with the quality of our air. And so in 1990, they removed our right to be able to resell those catalytic converters. We do have one state, New York, that passed a law many years ago that banned the resale of recycled undeployed airbags. But for the most part, those are the only two items that we cannot resell, or the parts. But we're going to protect the automotive recyclers' ability to sell recycled original equipment. We feel that that's essential part of the automotive repair process.
So not even like disc brakes and shocks.
Oh no, any of those things, and you spoke just briefly about the self-service market. Uh, when vehicles are placed after they are depolluted, so basically in a self-service facility, the vehicles are placed in the yard safely on stands or what have you, so people can go out there and pull their own parts. They're put out there after they're depolluted, so all the oils, fuels, anything that could possibly contaminate the environment has been removed from that vehicle, and people can literally go out and pull any part off of that vehicle that they need for their vehicle. So we don't have a restriction on the resale of a lot of those things. I think what has happened over the last several years is there's a lot of um, demand for cores for the rebuilding market. And so you see a lot of parts that used to be a kind of a staple in our automotive recycling facilities, such as alternators, starters, things like that. Those tend to go primarily to the rebuilding market for a large part in some of the major full service recyclers. But again, those parts are all open market and available to anybody who wants to pull them and needs them.
Impressive. Here in Brazil, we do have some restrictions on disc brakes and shocks and some other parts, and there's been going on a huge debate on what is actually whenever a car is let's say picked up by our police, either on a roadblock by any synchronous. Well, we are a country of some crazy things. For instance, we have an annual tax for car property. So every year you need to pay a tax for owning a car. And if you don't pay this tax and you're stopped in a roadblock, you can get your car towed and go to a car lot, and you only get it back when you pay all the pending taxes. So we do have a problem here deciding what is a car, what is a part supplier, and what is scrap. So we do have some cars that go into a wreckage and they're pretty much destroyed. But there's still people buying them, and so they can make legal a stolen car, doing to the documentation and etc. So how does this work in U.S.? I mean, I understand your laws are way better than ours, and your police enforcement even better. So, but the point is still, how can we? How do you guys work with this kind of situation? I mean, for instance, does cars from insurance companies are allowed to be sold, or they need to go straight to recycling? How does it work? I mean, what is the policy, or what is the common sense on how do you decide on what is recycling material, and what is ready to go to the street and everything in the middle?
Okay. Well, for the most part, the owner decides what happens to the vehicle. But from the insurance perspective, insurance companies may assume the ownership after a total loss claim is paid on that vehicle, and they pay it to the registered owner of the vehicle. So it may be a case where the insurance company represents the person whose car gets totaled, or they're finalizing another claim from another person that maybe their insured may have run into. So, however, the owner at all times has the legal right to determine what happens to the vehicle. Most salvage vehicles in the U.S. Go into the recycling market via auctions, salvage auctions, through direct insurance contracts. The owner Say the owner has a vehicle and it's just not running anymore and it's going to cost too much to repair. They may sell that vehicle. Primarily, those vehicles will go to the self-service market. There's lots of nonprofits that have car donations programs that they use as fundraisers for their organizations, and so people donate older vehicles to those nonprofit groups, and then they resell those vehicles either through an auction program or directly to auto recyclers. And then obviously, just like some of your programs there, some of the vehicles enter the auto recycling market through abandoned vehicle programs, and those may vary from state to state. So law enforcement does have a right to declare a vehicle abandoned and determine what happens to it at that point in time. And again, being 50 states, we might have 50 ways to handle that in different states. I can give you some examples in state to state, primarily in New Mexico, where we've done quite a bit of work working with all the agencies that have oversight of us, and more importantly, the law enforcement industry, because we all know, just like you said, you briefly mentioned, there's a lot of vehicles that are being used just for the VIN number and for the paperwork that comes with that vehicle, so that they can clone that vehicle, give it a whole new identity, and put it back out in the marketplace. So there's a huge number of things that go on with vehicles, and particularly some of the salvage vehicles. In the United States, all auto recyclers have to report the acquisition of every vehicle they bring into a national database called the NMVIDIS, which is the National Motor Vehicle Information Title System. So you report every vehicle into that system. Insurance companies report the vehicles, the salvage auctions report the vehicles, and then auto recyclers report the vehicles. And then that way, those vehicles aren't getting new identities when they cross state lines, for example. So if the motor vehicle agency has somebody come in with a title that they want to transfer into their name, the motor vehicle agency can go into that database and look at that vehicle to make sure it hasn't been reported that it's been dismantled and destroyed, because there is a lot of VIN theft and a lot of illegal activities that go on around that program.
Is this a government database?
Yes, it is. It's managed by the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. It was established in 2009, so it's been in activity since 2009. It was originally developed, the national legislation that passed was part of the Anti-Theft Act, and it was really to protect consumers, because at the end of the day, the people that get hurt the most from all this illegal activity are consumers. And so to protect the consumers' rights, that database was created, because again, with 50 states and 50 different laws, the vehicles don't even have the same title, it's same name from state to state. So maybe Arizona doesn't recognize the definition of a salvage vehicle the same as it does in New Mexico, or the ones that you talk about that are very, very badly damaged. Here in the state of New Mexico, we have a title brand called non-repairable vehicle. So if the owner or the insurance company decides that vehicle is so badly damaged total burn, total strip, whatever, and that it's the only purpose that it can serve is that is as parts or scrap, then that vehicle has to be given a non-repairable title. And the non-repairable vehicles in the state of New Mexico can only be acquired by professional licensed auto recyclers recognized by the state to process those vehicles for end of life. They can't be rebuilt. They can't be put back on the road. Literally, that vehicle does not exist as a vehicle anymore, so it can never go back out on the road.
Interesting. Well, I'm pretty sure that people from DMVs that are watching us, they're very glad to hear all that, and those are great concepts that we can maybe inspire us, and somehow we do have a national IT company from the government that could help us on that, but still, the information is not available everywhere. So we still need to work that, and I'm pretty sure this will be one of the biggest challenges that we have to unify all the information. So you mentioned that when someone like abandon a vehicle, how long does you mentioned that the police has all the criteria and makes the decision that considers that an abandoned vehicle. What happens then? Does they like put a sticker on it and say, hey, this is an abandoned vehicle, you have X days to get it out of the streets? How does it work?
Yeah, in most municipalities, that's exactly how it's handled. So if a vehicle gets abandoned, say on a roadway, the law enforcement obviously would put a sticker. They would give them, whatever that municipality's timeline was, a certain amount of time to remove that vehicle. Now, if it's in a location where it's a hazard because it's blocking the road or blocking a driveway, it can be towed immediately to what we call impound lots.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is the registered owner of that vehicle has to be notified within a certain amount of time where that vehicle's at and what their rights are as far as recovering that vehicle. If they don't recover it within that timeline, then the tow company or the impound lot that has it has the right to put that vehicle up for sale to recover some of their cost.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, in Brazil, you have a certificate of property that you need to, whenever you're going to sell a car, you need to go to like a notary and sign up some papers. So cars in Brazil are really like a big property, like a home. So we don't have as free market as you guys have, which is kind of lame. But you mentioned like tow trucks and impound lots. We see some of that on movies, sure. But how exactly does it work? Like the tow truck just drives around finding a car that's not doing, not abiding to the regulation, and he simply tows it away. How does it work?
For the most part, municipalities, so the cities, the counties have tow drivers and tow companies usually on call. And so they have contracts with those providers, and they usually do it in a rotation system. So they try to rotate so not all one company's getting all the calls. Obviously, a lot of companies wouldn't want a lot of abandoned vehicle calls because you'd have to have a huge piece of property to store all of them for the length of time that you have to store it. So the police department can call whoever's on the tow call that week and say, hey, I need you to go over to Cole and First Street and pick that vehicle up and impound it and notify the last owner. A lot of times law enforcement will go ahead and give them the information of the last vehicle owner so that they have that at their disposal to be able to reach out to the last known owner. And yeah, that's pretty much the way it works. So it is handled. There is a legal process that goes through.
And how long a car can stay in an impound until it's sold or actioned?
And again, that varies state to state and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So it could be a very quick process. It could be done within a week's time, and especially now that we have electronic systems that allow us to find people quicker, find the owners quicker, notify state lien holders. Maybe there's a bank that has a loan on that vehicle, and you've got to be able to find and trace anybody that has ownership assets in that vehicle. And so, like I said, any company that might have a loan on the vehicle. So the person who tows it in has to notify all parties, the registered owner and any registered lien holders on that vehicle. But again, that can vary anywhere from say a week to about 30 days. I know some states have a much longer process, but the one that seems to work the best is anywhere from a week to 30 days.
You know, people will get their butts moving and get their cars back.
Mhm.
This is what happens in Brazil. If you leave a car in the streets, you get a fine of 5,000 US. Your car get impound, and you're only getting it out if you pay all the fines, all the traffic tickets, and etc. Plus the 5,000 US. Actually, not 5,000, the 3,000 US for all the towing, the impound service, and etc. But a lot of people, when they look at their cars, well, my car is not worth that. So it's cheaper for them to just leave it as it is, and good luck with my car. And this is another debate that we as a country are having, because somebody needs to pay all this charge. I mean, it's not the car is a property, and you put it on your IRS statement, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a as I see, there's a big difference approach on how cars for you guys are like a simple product. For us, it's like a real big asset, let's say. So another question is, how many recyclers are in the RRA?
Well, in the U.S., that's a difficult number to come up with. I think the number that we know exists in the U.S. anywhere between 9 and 10,000 auto recyclers. Just like any country, though, we probably have just that many, if not twice as many, that are operating illegally. So they don't have any license, they don't have their environmental permits, they don't have any of the legal operating procedures in place to do what they're supposed to do. As far as members in ARA, ARA has about 1,100 members in 17 countries around the globe.
And how big is the car recycling industry?
About 32 billion in the United States.
Impressive. How many cars do you guys recycle a year?
I think we recycle. Oh boy, let me see here. What we recycle
Take your time.
here. I have that number here. Give me 1 second here.
No problem.
Um,
I'll take a sip and
I
ask
think
people
we
to send
divide
their
it.
comments.
Yeah, we don't have exact numbers, and part of the reason why it's so difficult is because of all the different definitions and how the industry is defined in the various states. And so we do have a national classification, 5015, which is our standard industrial code that is utilized primarily for some of the regulatory agencies. But I can tell you that we have, like I said, there's about 140,000 people employed in the industry. And like I said, we have 32 billion in annual sales.
That's a huge industry. Um, Cash for clunks. We've heard about it in Brazil. We tried a program like this in a port area nearby. Here's São Paulo, an hour drive from São Paulo, and a huge investment bank came, and there was a big communications effort. And despite all the months and all the jobs and all the work that we had to recover, actually get trucks, old trucks out of the way, we only did like 8. It was a fiasco. So how does Cash for Clunks works, and who financed them? And
Well, we've only ever had one Cash for Clunkers program in the
oh, really?
United States. That was in 2009. And that was a program basically designed to bail out the U.S. automakers. That was right after, after the 2008 decline in the economy, and the automakers were hurting drastically. We ran in less than 3 months' time 700,000 vehicles through that program, and it was all funded by the U.S. government. So the U.S. government put $3 billion on the table that gave everybody that had an older, more polluting vehicle. Obviously, trucks, SUVs, those tend to be the ones that pollute the most. There were requirements in place as to what type of vehicle they could buy. So they had to buy a much more fuel efficient, modern type vehicle. They had to be a new vehicle, and they were given X dollars, and I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but it was several $1,000s, basically acting as a down payment to go to the dealer and get a new vehicle. The dealer then took possession of that vehicle and was required by law to have the engine froze up. So they poured a chemical into the engine compartment and froze the engine. And because the auto recyclers were not allowed to resell the engines, they tried to put a environmental spin on it. So those engines couldn't even be sold into the remanufacturing market, which is a real shame. The auto recycler could sell any other parts on the vehicle, but they were given a very limited time to do that. So for the most part, it was a big failure here in the United States. We had a lot more go through, but in the end, it was a big failure for the most part. It may have bailed out and stimulated some of the automakers, but I don't think it was a great program for our industry. It pretty much decimated the used car industry because a lot of those vehicles that went through that program, 700,000 of them, were probably very good secondary used cars that could have gone into the used car market. So it was a very tough time for everybody, but there's been some talk about another program. It would never look like that one looked in 2009.
From what you've seen in the industry globally, what kind of stimulus you think that will be suitable for removing old cars from streets, or if that's something that's interesting for the recyclers?
I think the thing that works the best that we have found is make it easy. Don't make it so difficult. We're in the 21st century. We have computers, we have everything else. Just make sure there's a simple, easy system to put it through that makes sure everybody's held accountable, because at the foremost part of this is accountability. Everybody has to be accountable for their actions. So just have a very defined process. What happens when that vehicle comes in, but make it easy for it to go through that system. But at the end of the day, make sure that we're protecting the consumer and making sure we're protecting the potential owner of that vehicle. Say the vehicle got stolen, they were on vacation when it happened, they come back and their vehicle's gone, and it's already gone into an end-of-life processing program. Just make sure that there's a process in place to protect all parties in that. But they do work. We've seen them work. It's just dialing in and working, getting everybody in the same room, sitting down, talking it over, finding out what agency needs this part of the program to do, what law enforcement needs as far as support from our industry, what support we need from all of those agencies. It's a very doable program. It's something that we could do, and I'd love to help you guys with it if you need some help doing that.
Oh yeah, more than glad to have you on our side. I mean, there's a lot to be done. There's still there's another issue here in Brazil. For instance, if someone sues you on an employee sues you, in Brazil we have different jurisdictions for different kind of problems. So we have like a labor law. So whenever you have a labor problem, you go to a labor judge, and this guy can freeze your company assets And if your company goes bankrupt, he can freeze your assets, and then you cannot sell your car. Just like I mentioned, there's a huge paperwork whenever you want to transfer your car to another person. So imagine how many cars do we have on our impound lots, just like they're part of a lawsuit, a labor lawsuit, that cannot be sold because someone is looking for a compensation somehow, and this asset is tied to that process. So federal, state, and municipal lots, they face a lot of challenges, and this is something that we're trying to work on, bringing everybody to the table, just like I said. And we're starting. I mean, there's a lot of talk. The federal government is starting a new project on trucks recycling on South Brazil, I believe by next month or so. And the big opportunity is that the government is starting to look at it. So we're still very excited about it. And I mean, any help is great, especially when we see things that work. And we see the U.S. market very close to the Brazilian market, farther than the European market in many ways. I mean, our scrap market is closer to yours, or how's it called? Or waste industry is closer to yours. So there's a lot of similarities, and I believe that we can also benchmark from you more than we could benchmark from other countries. But anyway, I think this is it. I mean, I'll be more than glad to contact you whenever we have more questions. I understand that it's not easy. It's complex, as you said. It's 50 states. So it's probably 50 different situations and 50 different stories, so we can benchmark on. But meanwhile, I'm more than glad to have you here. Thank you for your time, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and don't hesitate to reach out to me or ARA, and we'll do whatever we can to help the professional auto recycler in Brazil. So we definitely like to see a vibrant industry there.
Well, thank you very much. I believe you're already part of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bem, pessoal, e com isso a gente termina mais uma transmissão da nossa Semana da Reciclagem Veicular. Eu espero vocês daqui a 1 hora e pouquinho para a nossa sessão com a Polícia Rodoviária Federal. Agradeço mais uma vez aos nossos patrocinadores, a Cofarja, Eudan, e Destra, Bonfilioli, Lorene, Loritex, Senebogen, Cianfer e Vortex por nos apoiar, e a gente se vê daqui a pouquinho. Não deixe de deixar o seu like, seu dislike, siga a gente no YouTube, nas nossas redes sociais, e a gente se vê daqui a pouco. Tchau, tchau.